To continue with the technique, first, we should inform the patient about the procedure, adverse reactions, and the side effects because some patients, some illiterate patients, they may think that this is a treatment, a kind of treatment, but this is a procedure. This should be explained. This is an investigation. This is a procedure done for an investigation, and we need to explain about the adverse reactions and the side effects. We have to get a written informed consent, and a bystander, a patient's attendant, a bystander should be nearby. That's followed by the pupil dilatation is a must because these FFA pictures, there'll be good documentation will be possible if the good pupil is dilated. Then make the patient to sit comfortably, and because this procedure is carried out in sitting position, so the patient should sit comfortably in the proper height and the chin position, head position, everything we should take care first. And that's followed by, first we should take the photo of the patient face. In the same machine we can take the, because sometimes medico legally they may argue that this particular investigation is not this particular patient's, they may ask in future. So always all the procedures should be started that first the patient patient face photo should be taken, and that's followed by we should take the fundus photo, because after this fundus fluorescent angiography, the retina picture, that the fundus photo may be greenish in color. So before starting the procedure we should take the fundus photo. If any OCT is recommended, if it is relevant, then we should do this ocular coherence tomography, and that's followed by red free photograph, then autofluorescence photos, then we should proceed with the fundus fluorescent angiography. The fluorescent dye is injected via the antecubital vein, and the normal arm retina time is 10 to 20 seconds. So 10 to 20 seconds, that's very important. And every 1 second interval, the photos are taken in the next 10 seconds, followed by every 2 second intervals for the next 30 seconds. Late photographs are usually taken after 3, 5 and the 10 minutes. So what are the complications we expect in this procedure? It could be mild, moderate or severe complications. Mild complications include staining of the skin. As I told before, the fair-skinned people, they may have staining of the skin, sclera or mucous membrane, saliva, stained secretion, tears, saliva, and the urine will be orange yellow in color for the next 1 to 2 days. Skin flushing, mild tingling sensation in the lips and pruritus may occur. Moderate sensation include nausea and vomiting. Usually the procedure is taken in the empty stomach, or we give a gap of 3 hours from the last food intake to the procedure so that we can avoid the vomiting. Nausea will be there, but in order to avoid the vomiting, better to carry out the procedure in the empty stomach. Rarely there may be vasovagal response, urticaria, fainting, and periphlebitis at the site of injection. Severe complications include laryngeal edema, bronchospasm, circulatory shock, myocardial infarction, cardiac arrest, generalized convulsions, and skin necrosis. These are the complications. So, always the fluorescent angiogram should be conducted such that the nearby emergency kit should be available, and emergency management, all the facilities should be available. So when is it contraindicated? When the procedure is contraindicated, there are two contraindications. One is absolute contraindication, the other is the relative contraindication. Absolute. Already the history of known allergy for fluorescent dye, or history of adverse reactions before when the procedure was conducted, fluorescent angiogram procedure was conducted. It's better to avoid the procedure in those patients. Relative include history of asthma, hay fever, renal failure, hepatic failure, and pregnancy. There are conditions like diabetic retinopathy where there is need for fluorescent angiography, but at the same time history of renal failure. So in these situations, better to get a written consent. Fitness for the procedure from the hepatologist or from the nephrologist or general physician, whatever it may be, whoever. So better to get the fitness for the procedure. That is very important before conducting this procedure. What are the phases of the normal angiogram? So as soon as the dye enters into the circulation, first the dye enters into the choroidal circulation, that is the choroidal phase or pre-arterial phase, and that's followed by the arterial phase, then arteriovenous phase, in the venous phase, early mid phase, mid venous, and the late venous, and that's followed by the late recirculation phase. So as soon as we start the injection, the choroidal phase starts in 10 seconds. It's not 10 seconds, so 10 to 11, 10 to 12 seconds. And that's followed by every 1 second, the rest of the phases starts. Like in 1 second, next in 1 second, arterial, then arteriovenous, early venous, mid venous. So if we add 1 second, 1 second, so gradually the late venous comes and late elimination phase will be there in the 5 minutes. First is the choroidal phase. As soon as the dye enters into the circulation, choroidal phase will be there. So the very important thing is this, what we see here, this is the hyperfluorescent blood vessel, that is the cilio-retinal artery. So this particular artery arises from the choroidal circulation. So what happens, as soon as the dye enters into the choroidal circulation, but still the dye has not entered into the retinal circulation, still we are able to see this blood vessel. This is cilio-retinal artery. So the very important thing is cilio-retinal artery will be seen in the choroidal circulation. Apart from that, we can see this hyperfluorescent areas, that is initially the choroidal circulation will be patchy lobular filling. Choroidal flush will be there, and that's followed by the leakage from the choroidal vessels. This fluorescent dye gets leaked from the choroidal vessels. So diffuse leakage of the choroidal circulation will be seen. So that's why diffuse hyperfluorescence will be seen here. That's why we are not able to study the choroidal circulation with fluorescent angiography, because the choroidal vessels leaks the fluorescent dye. So we will not be able to study the choroidal circulation. But at the same time, cilio-retinal artery arises from the choroidal circulation, from the short posterior ciliary arteries or from the choroidal circulation. So if cilio-retinal artery is present, we will be able to identify it as early in the choroidal circulation itself. So in the exam, if they ask when the cilio-retinal artery will be seen, it will be seen as soon as the dye enters into the choroidal circulation. We will not be able to study the choroidal circulation because this fluorescent dye gets leaked from the choroidal vessels. So initially it will be patchy filling, and that's followed by diffuse choroidal flush. So we will not be able to study the choroidal circulation with this fluorescent dye. So we can see here, we can see this hypofluorescent blood vessels. It means the dye has not entered into the retinal circulation. Now this is the arterial phase. So we can see here all these hyperfluorescent background, that is because of the leakage from the choroidal vessels. Now the dye has entered into the arterial circulation. So all these are arteries. So we know that artery to vein ratio is 2:3. So now the dye has entered into the arterial circulation. We can see the hyperfluorescent blood vessels, and still the dye has not entered into the venous circulation. We can see the hypofluorescent blood vessels. Those are veins and these are arteries. So the dye has entered into the arterial circulation. So now, and that's followed by, now the dye has entering into the, this has entered into the venous circulation. So now we can see the fluorescent dye entering into the venous circulation. We can see the hyperfluorescence noted along the wall of the vessel. So this is named as the laminar flow. This is laminar flow. So what is laminar flow? Let's imagine the road where the vehicles go. All the heavy vehicles, the vehicles which move faster like lorry, buses, move in the center. They all go in the center. What are the vehicles? Slow vehicles. They move in the corner, like two-wheelers and the cycle, walking people. They all move in the corners. So what happens? The velocity of the blood in the center of the vein, that's a lumen of the, in the central lumen of the vein, is faster than the than in the edges. So what happens? The hyperfluorescent, the fluorescent blood which enters into the circulation, it moves faster. It moves from the circulation. It gets cleared from the venous circulation. But the velocity of the blood is slower in the near the edge of the blood vessel. So here we'll be able to see the fluorescent dye. That's the fluorescence we will be able to see. So the concept here is the velocity of the blood in the center of the blood vessel is faster than near the edge. So fluorescent blood, whatever enters into the circulation, will get moved faster, but the velocity of the blood in the edge is slower. So what happens? Here we will be able to see the edge of the blood vessel, the walls of the blood vessel. Since the velocity of the blood is slower, we will be able to see the fluorescence there. So one more thing is the, this is bilaminar flow. One more thing is the trilaminar flow. Wherever the bifurcation of the blood vessel occurs, there will be able to see the trilaminar flow. So now what happens? Gradually more and more fluorescent blood enters into the central circulation. So now the gradually the laminar flow decreases. We can see here the gradually the laminar flow, that is the early venous phase and the mid venous phase, still the laminar flow is there, but still the filling of the blood vessel is occurring. Now this is the late venous phase. There is complete filling of the vein by the fluorescent dye. So, but here what we can see is this is the artery, this is the vein. Now, gradually the dye in the artery is moving away, it's getting cleared. So, here we can see the venous hyperfluorescence is more than the arterial hyperfluorescence. So, this is the late venous phase. There is no laminar flow here. This is the late recirculation phase. Now, all the vessels, both artery and veins, are filled with the dye. So, what is the difference between the late venous phase and the late recirculation phase? So, we see the disc. So, disc leakage occurs in the late recirculation phase. This is late venous phase. See, staining of the disc is not seen here. Disc staining is not seen here. But here we can see the staining. We can see the hyperfluorescence in the disc margin. So what is the reason here? Because the choriocapillaries in the, here the choroidal vessel choriocapillaries which terminates here will leak, and the lamina cribrosa, that will take the stain, that will take the fluorescent dye, that is named as staining. So due to the leakage from the choriocapillaries in the disc margin and staining of the lamina cribrosa in myopic patient nearby adjacent sclera, because of the chorioretinal atrophy, adjacent sclera also takes up the stain. All these will leads to hyperfluorescence of the disc, which we name as staining of the disc in the late recirculation phase. So this is differentiated from the late venous phase by the hyperfluorescence noted in the disc. Okay. So this we see after 5 minutes. So what are the pattern of fluorescence? It could be either hyperfluorescence or hypofluorescence. Hyperfluorescence includes pseudofluorescence, autofluorescence, window defect, leakage, pooling and the staining. Hypofluorescence include masking of the retinal flow, masking of choroidal flow and filling defect. So let's start with the pseudofluorescence. The blue excitation filter overlaps with the yellow-green barrier filter. So this occurs in the older machine, the previous version of the machine. Here the overlap of the filter occurs. At that time the pseudofluorescence occurs. Next is the autofluorescence. It's an innate property of fluorescence in certain ocular tissue. So fluorescence without the dye. So we have not injected the dye. Still fluorescent pattern will be seen. That is the autofluorescence. This we'll see in the optic nerve head drusen and astrocytic hamartoma and angioid streaks. See this patient, we can see it mimics like as if a papilledema or disc edema is there with a blurred disc margin, edematous disc. So if we take the autofluorescence picture, we'll be able to see the autofluorescence of this underlying drusen, optic disc drusen. Optic disc drusen we'll be able to see. So there are conditions like optic nerve head drusen and astrocytic hamartoma and angioid streaks. We'll be able to see this autofluorescence. So in the exam, if it is seen like this, we should not get confused with the fluorescent angiogram picture, because see all the blood vessels are hyperfluorescent. There is no dye in the eye. The dye is not injected yet. So it is autofluorescent. See the blood vessels. Blood vessels are hyperfluorescent. So this is the autofluorescent picture. Next is the window defect. As I told before, the retina has two barriers. One is the outer blood retinal barrier and the next is the inner blood retinal barrier. Outer is the RP Brooks membrane complex and the inner is the endothelial junction in the blood vessels. So this is the outer, what we see is the RPE, here is the Brooks membrane. RP Brooks membrane complex is a barrier. That's the outer blood retinal barrier. It's like a window. So the window of the retina. So what happens? These are the choroidal vessels. We know that as soon as the dye enters into the choroidal circulation, the dye in the choroidal vessels gets leaked. So it will give the diffuse hyperfluorescence. But what happens if there is a defect in the window? For example, this particular part is open. So as soon as the dye enters into the circulation, the dye may not have entered into the retinal circulation. Still we'll be able to see the hyperfluorescence. That is, the dye has not entered into the retinal circulation. Still we'll be able to see the hyperfluorescence because there is a defect in the window here. So we'll see the underlying choroidal hyperfluorescence. That is the window defect. So see this example here. This is in the late venous phase. We can see late venous phase. So this is in the late recirculation phase because we can see the disc here. So leakage from the disc or staining of the disc is seen here. Disc staining. So late recirculation phase, disc staining is there. So see this particular area. We can see the hyperfluorescence, multiple diffuse hyperfluorescence seen, which gradually disappears in the late phase. We can compare these two areas. So this suggestive of the window defect. Okay, so in the same patient, if we would have taken the picture in the early phases, we would have seen hyperfluorescence. So what happens? We'll be able to see that this is actually this particular area we are seeing the underlying choroidal due to the choroidal hyperfluorescence due to the RP defect, RP non-functioning or RP defect. We are seeing the underlying choroidal circulation here. Eventually, over a period of time, the dye in the choroidal circulation gets washed off. So what happens? So this particular area fluorescence also get fainted. So the hyperfluorescence which is seen in the early phase, which gradually disappears in the late phase, is suggestive of window defect. Okay, hope you all understood. So the hyperfluorescence due to the defect in the window. The window is the RP. So the hyperfluorescence which seen in the early phase, which subsequently disappears or reduces, decreases in intensity in the late phase. This suggestive of window defect due to the RP alterations. Next is the leakage. So leakage is due to the defect in the inner blood retinal barrier. Inner blood retinal barrier, that is the endothelial junction, which is affected in the diabetic retinopathy or venous occlusive disorders or in choroidal neovascular membrane. So this is the fundus photo of a patient. That is the fundus picture of the left eye. Okay, so we can see in the fundus picture, we can see multiple superficial and the deep, that is the dot and blot flame shaped hemorrhages. We can see the new vessels here. So this is the fluorescent angiogram picture of the left eye. This is in the late venous phase, could be, because we don't see, this is not in the late recirculation phase. We don't see the staining of the disc. Okay, so this is in the, because all the blood vessels are filled, there are no laminar flow. So this is in the late venous phase. We can see the hyperfluorescence in the disc. This is the superior arcade, superior to superior arcade, in the superior arcade, temporal to the fovea, along the inferior arcade and nasally. Okay, so which increases in intensity. So we can see the fuzzy hyperfluorescence or cotton ball hyperfluorescence. We can see all this here. Fuzzy hyperfluorescence or cotton ball hyperfluorescence seen in the disc along the superior arcade, temporal to the fovea, along the inferior arcade nasally, which increases in intensity. So that is the hyperfluorescence noted in the disc along the arcades nasal to the disc, which increases in intensity as a fuzzy or cotton ball hyperfluorescence. All these suggestive of new vessels, that is neovascularization of the disc and neovascularization elsewhere. So this is the defect in the inner blood retinal barrier, which suggestive of new vessels. Okay, so this is a case of proliferative diabetic retinopathy with neovascularization of the disc and elsewhere. Okay, see, before coming to a diagnosis in the exam, we should look for the other findings also. Other findings like, see, what are the, okay, let's discuss about all this later. What are the other findings in this picture also we need to consider before coming for the final conclusion. So now in this slide, what we are going to learn is the break in the or defect in the inner blood retinal barrier will cause the leakage. Okay, so defect in the outer blood retinal barrier. Okay, so that is the here we see the RP alteration, that is the window defect, and what we saw here was the leakage, that is the defect in the inner blood retinal barrier. So one more picture here in this. This is in the mid-venous phase. We can see the laminar flow. Still there are laminar flow. So this is the fundus fluorescent angiogram picture of the left eye, which is in the mid-venous phase. We can see the laminar flow here and multiple pinpoint hyperfluorescence noted. We can see here this. Okay, multiple pinpoint hyperfluorescence noted in the mid-venous phase. Ideally, we will be seeing all this in the early phase also, but based on this picture, I am telling that this is the fundus picture of the left eye in the mid-venous phase, showing multiple pinpoint hyperfluorescence noted in the macula and beyond the arcades, which increases in intensity, suggestive of leakage. This suggestive of leaking microaneurysms. Okay, see, we don't see any fuzzy hyperfluorescence here, as we here we saw, isn't it? Over the disc in the along the arcades, those are fuzzy hyperfluorescence, fuzzy or cotton ball hyperfluorescence. These are new vessels, leakage of the new vessels. But here we don't see such kind of hyperfluorescence. All these pinpoint hyperfluorescence leakage, gradually you can see it's leaking. So these are microaneurysms. This suggestive of non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy. We don't have 8-quadrant photograph. We have only one picture. So this is non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy. And if we see the non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy due to the leaking microaneurysms, because we don't see any new vessel scission, so this is not proliferative. This is non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Okay, so if we see here, we can see the flower petal pattern. We can see here flower petal pattern of leakage. That is the leakage due to the cystoid macular edema, flower petal leakage. Next, we move on to the pooling. Pooling is the accumulation of the dye in the anatomical space. That is the pooling, accumulation of the dye in the anatomical space. So, we see two pictures here. This is retinal pigment epithelium. This is neurosensory retina. So, it is named as neurosensory detachment. Okay. So, the neurosensory retina gets detached from the underlying RPE, retinal pigment epithelium. So, this is neurosensory detachment. But here, this is retinal pigment epithelium and this is the Bruch's membrane. So, this is pigment epithelial detachment. Understood? So, these two pictures are different. This is neurosensory detachment and this is pigment epithelial detachment. Okay. Now, this is neurosensory detachment. This neurosensory retina is loosely adhered to the underlying RPE. Okay, this is loosely adhered. So, it doesn't require more force to separate this since it is loosely adhered. So, this particular detachment usually involves a wider area. That is, neurosensory detachment will be bigger. This area will be bigger. But here, this is RP detachment, that is PED, pigment epithelial detachment. This retinal pigment epithelium is tightly adhered to the underlying Bruch's membrane. So, here it needs more force to separate it. Since more force is required, this particular pigment epithelial detachment usually it will be smaller in size. Understood? Neurosensory detachment usually involves the bigger area, but pigment epithelial detachment usually it will be small one. Okay. Since here less force is required, this particular area is more of acute. Okay, it involves wider area and this angle will be acute. But here it requires more force. So this area of detachment will be usually small and this particular angle will be more obtuse. That is, the angle of this will be more than this angle. It's more of obtuse, or this particular angle is, it's not more shallow. Okay, so it's more peaked, tented type, it will be there. And in case of this neurosensory detachment, whenever there is leakage of the fluid, there will be defect in the RP. Usually you can see here a small space is in through which the leakage occurs. But here, as we know that as soon as the dye enters into the choroidal circulation, it will be leaking from the choroidal vessels. So this leakage occurs gradually, drop by drop. This leakage enters into the choroidal, this neurosensory detachment. This from here, gradually it enters into this particular area. But here, this is in direct contact with this this choriocapillaries, this choroidal vessel. So what happens, as soon as the leakage starts here, this particular area will be filled with the dye. Understood? So what happens, as the time advances, gradually there will be increase in intensity and not in the size. Okay, so this particular area is in direct contact with this choroidal vessel. So what happens, as soon as the dye enters into the choroidal circulation, the leakage starts. As soon as the leakage starts, it enters into this pigment epithelial detachment. So this full area will be filled with the dye immediately. At the same time, as the time advances, gradually the intensity increases, but not in the size. But here, there is a small defect in this area, neurosensory detachment. Gradually the dye enters into this circulation, this particular area, anatomical space. So what happens, gradually increase in intensity and size will be seen here. Okay, let me repeat again. This neurosensory retina is loosely adhered to the underlying RPE. So what happens? This usually involves a wider area and wider area. Here it is tightly adhered to the underlying Bruch's membrane. So this will be small. So here gradually increase in intensity and size occurs. But here the size will be filled immediately, but gradually increase in intensity occurs. Okay, let's move on to some other examples. See here. So this is a OCT picture of this patient. This is this hyperreflective area. This is the retinal pigment epithelium. Okay, underlying retinal pigment epithelium. So this is the neurosensory retina. This is neurosensory detachment. You can see this particular area is wider. It involves more area. What we see here, this hyperreflective layer is in, that is the retinal pigment epithelium. This is pigment epithelial detachment. Okay. So let's move on to this picture. We can see here the hyperfluorescence. See this particular area, hyperfluorescence, this hyperfluorescent area, compare with this to this, which increases in intensity and size. Gradually increase in intensity and size occurs. This is this neurosensory detachment. Okay, but see this particular area, this particular hyperfluorescence, it increases only in intensity and not in the size. You can see this. Compare this to this, it increases in intensity and not in the size. That is pigment epithelial detachment. Hope you all clear. Okay, so neurosensory detachment gradually increases in intensity and size because gradually filling occurs. But in case of pigment epithelial detachment, gradually the dye gets filled immediately. There is no increase in the size, but increase in intensity occurs. Okay, so this is pigment epithelial detachment. This is a picture of a patient, central serous chorioretinopathy. So this picture is in the late venous phase. See, there is no laminar flow. All the vessels are filled with the fluorescent dye. So, but there is no staining of the disc. But here there is staining of the disc. So this is in the late recirculation phase. Next we move on to the staining. Staining, that is uptake of the dye by certain ocular tissue. That is, for example, drusen or scar. So what happens, as soon as the dye enters into the choroidal circulation, it starts leaking. So the leaking of the dye and whatever it's near this particular circulation, it will uptake the stain. So it will uptake the stain and it will retain the stain. That is the staining. Staining means stain. It's a stain in the dress or whatever it is. So it retains. Okay. So that is the uptake. So we'll see the hyperfluorescence in the early phase and it persists in the late phase. This is the fundus picture of the right eye showing the drusen. We can see these are drusen in the right eye in the macular area. Here, as soon as the dye enters into the circulation, staining, choroidal circulation, uptake of the dye by this drusen occurs. It retains the stain, and this leads to staining of the drusen. Now, we may get confused whether it is staining or due to window defect. The basic difference is window defect. Window defect means the window is the retinal pigment epithelium. So, since the window is not there, we are seeing whatever is next to window, we are able to see that. That is the choroidal circulation. So, window defect means hyperfluorescence seen in the early phase, but gradually as the dye gets cleared from the choroidal circulation, the fading of the hyperfluorescence noted. That is the window defect. So, window defect, hyperfluorescence seen in the early phase, and that's followed by gradually fading of the hyperfluorescence occurs in the late phase. But in case of staining, hyperfluorescence seen in the early phase and persist in the late phase. Understood? Hyperfluorescence seen in the early phase persists in the late phase, that is the staining, because retention of the dye by the ocular tissue like drusen and the scar. Okay, so we should be able to differentiate the staining from the window defect. Window defect means early phase hyperfluorescence and that's followed by the fluorescence gets fade because the dye is getting washed from the choroidal circulation. But in staining, uptake of the tissue, so hyperfluorescence seen in the early phase and it persists in the late phase. See here, this is the late recirculation phase, staining of the disc is seen. Then we move on to the hypofluorescence. The first is the blockage. So we have finished with the hyperfluorescence. Let's move on to the hypofluorescence. This picture beautifully depicts the blockage. Okay, see here, this is choroidal circulation. If something is here, some blood or something is there, we'll be able to see this retinal circulation. Okay, but we'll not be able to see the choroidal circulation. Okay, so next is here, if the blood is in the inner retina, then it blocks both the underlying choroidal circulation and the deep retinal circulation. Then we'll be able to see the superficial circulation. Okay. So next, if the blood is in the deep, then we'll not be able to see the choroidal circulation. Okay. So if it is superficial, it blocks all the retinal and the choroidal circulation. See here. But it is in the inner retina. It will be able to see the superficial fluorescence. It blocks the underlying deep and the choroidal circulation. If it is here subretinal blood, then it blocks the underlying choroidal circulation, but we'll be able to see the retinal circulation. So in this we can see here, this is the fundus picture of the right eye. This is due to the vitreous hemorrhage. The picture is not clear. So it blocks underlying retinal and the choroidal circulation because everything is pre-retinal. Vitreous hemorrhage or pre-retinal hemorrhage, it blocks all the what are the circulation, what are the fluorescent underlying that. Okay. So here we can see the multiple flame-shaped hemorrhages or superficial hemorrhages. So superficial hemorrhages block the underlying retinal and the choroidal circulation, but at the same time deep retinal hemorrhages will be able to see the superficial retinal circulation. We can see here, we'll be able to see all the superficial retinal circulation, but these hemorrhages block the underlying deep retinal circulation and the underlying choroidal fluorescence. This is a picture of branch retinal vein occlusion. Here in this, these are subretinal blood. So this is the fundus picture of the right eye with multiple subretinal hemorrhages. So here also we can see the subretinal blood. So what happens? We are able to see the retinal circulation. We can see the retinal blood vessels, fluorescent in the retinal blood vessels. But underlying choroidal circulation we are not able to see because of this blocked fluorescence in the subretinal space. Next is the filling defect. Filling defect is the dye has not entered into this particular area. So this is a picture of the capillary non-perfusion area or capillary dropout areas. This is a quadrangular area surrounded by the blood vessels with the central hypofluorescence. So this suggestive of the poor circulation, poor retinal circulation. So we name it as filling defect or capillary non-perfusion area, CNP areas or capillary non-perfusion areas, or we can name it as filling defect areas. Due to because the dye has not entered into this, there is no circulation, there are no blood vessels. Okay. Here we see some examples. This is the fluorescent angiogram picture of the left eye, and this is in the late venous phase because here we don't see the staining of the disc. This is the fundus fluorescent angiogram picture of the left eye, which is in the late recirculation phase because we can see the staining of the disc here. Now in this, we can see the arteries, we can see the veins, we can see the macula, and in the macula, in the fovea, we measure the foveal avascular zone, which should be measured in the early phase itself because in the late phase, leakage occurs. We may not be able to measure exactly the foveal avascular zone. It is noted here 1567 micrometers, so foveal avascular zone is enlarged. It's irregular. Okay, FA. So this is suggestive of macular ischemia. We can see the hyperfluorescence over the disc near the superior arcade, which increases in intensity in the late phase, suggestive of fuzzy hyperfluorescence or cotton ball hyperfluorescence, which suggests of neovascularization of the disc and elsewhere. We can see the hypofluorescent areas temporal to the macula surrounded by the blood vessels which persist in the late phase. This suggestive of capillary non-perfusion areas. Now we need to see other findings also. We can see the multiple pinpoint hyperfluorescence seen in the macula and outside the arcades, which increases in intensity in the late phase, suggestive of leaking microaneurysms. All these findings, see macular ischemia, capillary non-perfusion areas, pinpoint hyperfluorescence suggestive of microaneurysms, neovascularization of the disc and elsewhere, all these suggestive of proliferative diabetic retinopathy. So before coming to a conclusion, we need to see multiple findings, all the findings, and we need to come to a conclusion. So this is the fluorescent angiogram picture of the right eye. So this is in the, could be in the early or mid venous phase. We can see the laminar flow here, and this is in the late venous phase. This is also in the late venous phase, and this is in the late recirculation phase, because we can see the staining of the disc here. Okay. Now we can see the hyperfluorescence in the early phase. This concentrate on this particular area, which fades in the late phase. Okay, we can see the hyperfluorescence in this area that is inferior to the fovea, which gradually fades in the late phase. So this is suggestive of the window defect due to the RP defect or RP alterations. So this particular area RP is not healthy. So what happens? This particular area RP is not healthy. So there is window defect. The window is not functioning properly. So we are seeing the underlying choroidal circulation. Gradually, as the dye gets washed from the choroidal circulation, it gets fade off. Okay, number one. Next is we can see the hyperfluorescence. We can see the hyperfluorescence concentrate in this area. We can see multiple hyperfluorescent spots in this area, which persist in the late phase. You can see here this hyperfluorescence. Multiple hyperfluorescent areas persist in the late phase. This suggestive of staining of the drusen. Okay, staining this because we can see the hyperfluorescence here which persists in the late phase, which suggestive of staining due to the drusen. Okay. Next, we can see the hyperfluorescence here in the fovea. Hyperfluorescence here in the fovea, which gradually increases in intensity and the size. We can see the hyperfluorescence here, 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 and here. This suggestive of leakage. Understood? Each and every term is very important. Leakage is due to the break in the inner blood retinal barrier. That is a leakage from the blood vessel. So we should remember that it is leaking from the blood vessel. Understood? These two are window defect and this is staining. Staining is by the drusen here. And this is from the window defect due to the RP alteration. This is leakage from the blood vessel. So which blood vessel leaks from the fovea? We should see other findings in the retina. Are there any neovascularization of the disc or near arcades or in rest of the areas or any pinpoint? Rest of the areas are clean and neat. Only all these angiogram findings we are getting only in this area. This is suggestive of choroidal neovascular membrane. Okay, so usually in this area we'll get the choroidal. So it's a leakage from the blood vessel. Of course, choroidal neovascular membrane leakage. New vessel leakage is here, and drusen staining of the drusen occurs here. RP alterations, window defect. So the diagnosis is choroidal neovascular membrane. So this is the fundus fluorescent picture of the left eye, and we can see the hypofluorescence. Fundus fluorescent picture of the left eye, hypofluorescence in the, this is in the late venous phase, maybe in the late recirculation, because we don't see the actual disc staining here. So this is in the late venous phase. We can see the hypofluorescence in the fluorescent angiogram, and hypofluorescence which increase in intensity in the late phase, that is the hyperfluorescence in the late phase. Okay, this is actually the indocyanine green angiogram picture. Indocyanine green picture, hyperfluorescence seen surrounding the disc, which hyperfluorescence persists in the late phase of the indocyanine green angiogram. This is typically suggestive of choroiditis, peripapillary choroiditis. Okay, hypofluorescence in the early phase of fluorescent angiogram followed by hyper in the late phase of fluorescent angiogram. Okay, fluorescent angiogram, hyper. But in corresponding ICGA, hypofluorescence. Some people use the word hypo or hypercynoscence, but fluorescence is the word commonly used even for indocyanine angiogram. Okay, so hypo, hyper, hypo, hypo. This is typical of choroiditis. Okay. So what happens here? The leakage occurs from the chorionic capillaries here due to the edematous RP, and there is defect in the choroidal blood vessels. There is no in the choroidal circulation. There are no chorionic capillaries here because defect is there. Okay, because of the choroiditis, it's got destroyed due to the masking effect of the RP, swollen edematous RP, and due to the defect in the chorionic capillaries, there is hypofluorescence seen throughout the phases of ICG. Okay, so this is typical of choroiditis, peripapillary choroiditis. Now, see in this example, so this is in the late venous phase. This is a fundus fluorescent angiogram picture of the right eye, which is in the late venous phase. This is in the late recirculation phase. We can see the staining of the disc margin staining. Multiple pinpoint hyperfluorescence seen in the macula outside the arcade, which increases in intensity in the late phase, suggestive of leaking microaneurysms. Okay, so we can see the hyperfluorescence here in the late phase. This is due to the macular edema, the leakage due to the macular edema. Okay, diffuse leakage noted temporal to the fovea due to the macular edema. We don't see any other hyperfluorescence, that fuzzy or cotton ball hyperfluorescence in the disc or in the arcade. So there are no new vessels. So we should see all the findings and come to the conclusions. Like see in this picture, there are no other findings. It all involves only in the fovea, center of the macula. So this is choroidal, usually choroidal neovascular membrane. We don't get any other findings. It involves only in the macular area. But see in this picture, here we can see the findings everywhere in the macula. Multiple pinpoint hyperfluorescence. Okay, so this is suggestive of non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Okay, this is not proliferative. We don't see any new vessels. This is a fundus fluorescent picture of the right eye. Okay, and we can see the tortuous dilated sclerosed vessels in the inferior arcade. You can see here. Coiled vessels are seen here. So this is a fundus fluorescent angiogram picture in the late venous phase. Late venous, it's no. It's laminar flow is there. Mid venous phase. We can consider it as mid venous phase. Okay. So in the mid venous phase, so we can see the arterial filling here, but here if you see, we can see the arterial filling. We see the hypofluorescent blood vessel. There is no dye here. So no filling of the vessel in this particular area. Okay. So poor filling of the blood vessel is noted here. And we can see the hypofluorescent areas near in the inferior part of the inferior to in the inferior part of the macula and the inferior retina. Okay, we can see this. And this is in the late venous phase. Okay, we can see the areas of hypofluorescence noted inferior part of the macula and inferior to inferior arcade. Coiled blood vessels we are able to see, and in the late phase staining of the, this is the late recirculation phase, hyperfluorescence noted in the disc and the coiling of the tortuous dilated vessels. We can see the coiled vessels here, persistence of hypofluorescence area. All these suggestive of branch retinal vein occlusion. Okay, so this is venous occlusion. We can see the arteries filled here. This is vein, and the late phase staining noted, staining of the vessel. So this is branch retinal vein occlusion. All these coiled vessels are collaterals. Okay, this here we can see the collaterals. And this particular thing, this is actually the new vessels. So initially the blocked fluorescence due to the vitreous hemorrhage. Okay, hemorrhage, that is new vessel over the disc, and eventually there is leakage from the new vessels noted here. So neovascularization of the disc with the branch retinal vein occlusion with collaterals, and we can see the I couldn't see any new vessels here, neovascularization elsewhere. So, but we can see the new vessel in the disc. Okay, so this is branch retinal vein occlusion with neovascularization in the disc and the vitreous hemorrhage. So in this picture, this is the fundus fluorescent angiogram picture of the left eye. Left eye, it is in the, we can see the laminar flow here. So it is in the mid venous phase, and multiple pinpoint hyperfluorescence seen in the macula outside the arcades, which increases in intensity in the late phase, suggestive of leaking microaneurysms. We can see the flower petal pattern of hyperfluorescence here, which increases. We can see the increases in intensity in the late phase suggestive of leakage due to the macular edema. This is cystoid macular edema, flower petal pattern. Okay, so this is non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy. We don't see any neovascularization of the disc or any fussy or cotton ball hyperfluorescence anywhere. So this finding suggestive of non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy. So in this picture, this is in the arterial phase. See, the dye has entered only in the arterial circulation. The venous circulation, the dye has not entered. This is in the arterial phase. We can see then the dye has entered into the venous circulation. We can see the staining of the vessels seen in all quadrants. This is not leakage. You don't see any fussy hyperfluorescence there. Here, all these findings, staining of the vessel in all the quadrants, in all the veins. So this is due to the vasculitis. The diagnosis is vasculitis. Now, in this picture, for the this is the fundus spot of the right eye. We can see the blurred disc margin looking like edematous disc. No other findings. Rest of the retina is tessellated. It appears normal. So this is the autofluorescence picture. See, all the blood vessels are hypofluorescent. This is the autofluorescent picture. Autofluorescence picture, and we can see the hyper. This is autofluorescence. This is due to the optic disc drusen. Autofluorescence. Rest everything is normal. So in this picture, this is the fundus fluorescent angiogram picture of the left eye. This is the nasal part of the retina. We can see the hyperfluorescence seen. This is in the late recirculation phase because we can see the staining of the disc margin. And see, for this, you can use both staining or leakage in the late phase because leakage from the choriocapillaries occurs in the disc margin and staining due to the lamina cribrosa and the margin of the sclera also occurs. So no problem with that. So we can see the hyperfluorescence here. We can see the fussy or cotton ball hyperfluorescence noted nasal to the disc. This is suggestive of neovascularization elsewhere. That's a new vessels. We can see the multiple hyperfluorescent spots with the central hypofluorescence throughout the retina. This is temporal part. All these are due to the panretinal photocoagulation. That is a laser scar. Okay, laser scar will have hyperfluorescent margin with the central hypofluorescent area. Central hypo due to the chorioretinal atrophy. Okay. So in this, they have done this fluorescent angiogram to look for the activity of the any other new vessels are there or not. In order to identify the new vessel, this was done, and we are able to pick up the new vessels. So this is interesting and another beautiful picture. This is a fundus fluorescent angiogram picture of the left eye. We can see the hyperfluorescence noted temporal to the fovea, which increases in intensity in the late phase. Okay, you can see here, isn't? See the hyperfluorescence. So corresponding OCT here. What's the diagnosis? This is the neurosensory detachment. These are the phagocytosed macrophages. This is the retinal pigment. This hyper reflective layer is the retinal pigment epithelium. This is neurosensory detachment. The diagnosis, that is the ink blot pattern of CSCR leakage, that is central serous chorioretinopathy. You should not say this as the new vessels because even in new vessels you will get the leakage, but look for the other findings. Why should the new vessel occur in this particular retina? Rest of the retina is normal. We don't see any other pinpoint hyperfluorescence to suggest of non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy. We don't see any cotton ball or fussy hyperfluorescence to suggest of proliferative diabetic retinopathy. We don't see any vascular filling defect or no staining of the vessels to suggest of venous occlusive disease or vasculitis. All the blood vessels are normal. We see only one hyperfluorescence, that is the pooling of the dye. This is pooling of the dye in the anatomical space. Gradually the leakage occurs. See here. Okay, gradually increase in intensity and size suggestive of ink blot pattern, which suggestive of central serous chorioretinopathy. That is the pooling of the dye in the anatomical space. Thank you.